What if the story of performance trucks started long before the Ford Lightning? Long before that legend, Dodge built a 1960s muscle cars truck that rewrote the rules, and today, we revisit it together. Remember to take care of your health and enjoy this moment of pure automotive soul. If you have spent any amount of time around American performance culture, you already know this simple truth. Car companies love to build things that make absolutely no sense, yet somehow make all the sense in the world. And nothing captures that chaotic genius better than the idea of a muscle truck. A machine originally designed to haul lumber, sacks of concrete, or maybe a couple of lawnmowers, suddenly stuffed with a thundering V8 big block that turns every grocery run into a burnout contest. It is ridiculous on paper. But once you hear that deep rumble echo off the pavement, it becomes weirdly brilliant. Because instead of hauling tools in the bed, these trucks hauled clouds of tire smoke. Instead of struggling to get up to traffic speed, they were capable of launching from 0 to 60 in the kind of time that embarrassed real sports cars of their era. And while marketing departments and government regulators stared at them in total confusion, the gearheads understood immediately. This was rebellion on four wheels, raw, unfiltered, unapologetic power, hiding under the sheet metal of something that was never meant to be fast. Today we have Ram TRX, Shelby Raptors, and supercharged Silverados, proving that the muscle truck is alive and well. But what most people do not realize is that this whole philosophy did not begin in the 90s. It did not begin with Ford Lightning either. The roots run much deeper, all the way back to the early 1960s. Because more than 60 years ago, Dodge quietly unleashed a truck so wild, so unexpectedly powerful, that it became the true ancestor of the entire muscle truck movement. And to understand how it happened, we have to go back to the very beginning. By the early years of the 1960s, Detroit was entering a new era. The muscle car movement was just beginning to take shape, and the streets were filling with machines that mixed big displacement engines with everyday bodies. Pontiac had ignited a spark with the first GTO. Chevrolet was testing the limits of its big block programs, and Ford was preparing a wave of high-performance packages meant to conquer both street and strip. It was a time when engineering departments pushed boundaries, and marketing teams scrambled to name whatever monster their engineers had created. But trucks were still trapped in another world. They were tools, nothing more, built to tow, to haul, to endure long hours of hard work. No one in the boardrooms of any major manufacturer imagined that a pickup could be anything beyond a reliable partner on a job site. And yet, within Dodge, a different thought began to take root. Someone realized that the same rugged frame that made the D-Series dependable could also be the foundation for something far more exciting. The company was already searching for ways to stand out. Its cars were gaining attention, but its trucks needed an identity that separated them from the competition. And in 1963, Dodge found a spark in an unexpected place. It was a moment when a single idea, born partly from competition and partly from curiosity, started to reshape what a truck could become. It set the stage for a machine that no one asked for, no one predicted, and no one could ever forget. The spark that pushed Dodge toward building a true performance truck did not come from an engineering meeting or a marketing survey. It came from a man far outside the corporate walls. In 1963, a San Diego disc jockey named Dick Boynton decided that a regular Dodge D100 was not enough. Instead of treating his truck like a work tool, he turned it into a drag strip experiment that he proudly called the Dragmaster. Boynton dropped a Max Wedge 413 inside the engine bay, a power plant capable of roughly 420 horsepower, an absurd idea for a truck at the time. The result was a machine that shocked everyone who saw it. At the famous Winter Nationals in Pomona, the Dragmaster stormed through the factory experimental class and took the win. People in the stands could not believe that a pickup, the same type of vehicle used for hauling equipment, had just outrun dedicated race cars. And Boynton was not alone. On the other side of the country, a one-time build of a Ford F-100XL also captured a victory in its region, proving that the concept was not a fluke. These moments lit a fire within Dodge. If an independent builder could transform a D-Series truck into a track-winning monster, then the company had every reason to explore the idea themselves. This was the moment when Dodge moved from curiosity to conviction, realizing that the foundation for a true muscle truck already existed. Before Dodge unleashed anything close to a true performance package, the company introduced something far more subtle. In 1964, they rolled out an option known as the Custom Sports Special, or simply CSS. At a glance, it did not look like a performance upgrade at all. Instead, it was about comfort, refinement, and a hint of luxury inside a truck world that had never seen such things. For roughly $235, a D100 buyer could transform the interior from a bare-bones workspace into something that felt almost stylish. Dodge borrowed bucket seats from the Dodge Dart, added a center armrest, and pulled a full-length console from the larger Polara. These touches created a cabin that no longer felt like a metal box meant only for hauling tools. It was a space where someone could spend real time without feeling punished by every bump and vibration. But even with all this, the CSS trucks remained rare. Pickup buyers in the early 1960s were not hunting for premium interiors. They wanted durability, payload, and practicality. A truck with bucket seats and a console was unusual, even confusing, to many customers at the time. Yet this quiet experiment ended up being far more important than Dodge expected. The CSS package laid the groundwork for something far more extreme. It provided the look, the feel, and the small touches that allowed Dodge to later conceal a monster beneath ordinary sheet metal. Because once you dressed a truck up on the inside, it became even easier to hide what was coming next. If the CSS package was Dodge dipping its toes into the idea of a more premium pickup, the high-performance package was Dodge grabbing the entire concept of a work truck and throwing it into uncharted territory. Introduced quietly in 1964, the HPP did not appear in flashy ads, did not get a marketing push, and was never intended for the mass market. It was more like a whispered secret for the few who knew exactly what they were looking for. And it was expensive. At roughly $1,235, the HPP cost nearly two-thirds the price of a brand new D100. For most buyers, that made no sense at all. Spending that kind of money on a truck that still looked almost stock was unthinkable. Which is precisely why so few were ever ordered. But the real story was not the price. It was the way these trucks were built. An HPP truck could not simply roll down the same assembly line as every other D-series. Once selected for the package, the truck was pulled aside, where craftsmen modified it by hand. They cut and reworked the front crossmember to clear the larger engine, welded in new brackets, reshaped the frame rails, and added a special traction bar system in the rear to keep the powerful motor from twisting the truck into a mess of wheel hop. Dual exhaust had to be custom-fitted, and the heavy-breathing engine required additional tweaks that simply did not belong on a normal production line. Every HPP truck was a low-volume project inside a high-volume factory, a strange blend of mass production and hot rod craftsmanship. Dodge planned to build around 50 of them between 1964 and 1966, but even that number is wrapped in uncertainty. Documentation was thin, records were incomplete, and the trucks were so uncommon that no one can say with confidence how many truly existed. And that mystery only adds to their legend. Inside most HPP trucks sat the 426 Street Wedge, a detuned but still brutal descendant of the Max Wedge program. It produced about 365 horsepower and an incredible 470 pound-feet of torque, numbers that dwarfed nearly every pickup engine of the era. Many trucks of the time struggled to reach 200 horsepower, which made the D100 HPP feel like a completely different species. Performance figures proved the point. 0 to 60 arrived in under 8 seconds, and quarter-mile runs landed in the mid-15-second range, essentially equal to a first-year Pontiac GTO. For a machine shaped like a work truck, these numbers bordered on unbelievable. Dodge had created a vehicle that refused to fit in any category. It looked like a tool for the job site but ran with the muscle cars that defined the 1960s, becoming one of the earliest and clearest examples of a true muscle truck. Driving an HPP-equipped D100 was nothing like driving an ordinary pickup. The 3-speed torque flight, 727 automatic, and the 3.91 rear axle ratio made the truck eager to break the rear tires loose, even with light throttle. Drivers from that era often recalled the jump from first to second as a moment you could feel in your chest, not just hear from the exhaust. The traction bar system Dodge welded into the frame kept the rear end planted, preventing violent wheel hop under the huge torque load. The 4-barrel carburetor and dual exhaust gave the truck a deep, confident growl that felt completely out of place on something shaped like a work vehicle. The best part was how unassuming it looked. Without the CSS package, the truck appeared nearly stock, turning it into a pure sleeper. With the CSS interior added, it became an even stranger mix, a comfortable cabin hiding the heartbeat of a monster. Trying to determine how many HPP trucks survive today has become part of the legend. One registry suggests around 19 trucks, combining both CSS and HPP, with one confirmed destroyed. Other sources point to totals near 27 or 28, plus roughly 12 units, with only the HPP, and around 55 with only the CSS. The inconsistency makes these trucks feel even more elusive and collectible. Compared to rivals of the era, the D100 HPP stood alone. Ford topped out with a 352 and Chevrolet with a 327, both respectable engines, but nowhere near the brute force of the 426. For a brief moment in the mid-1960s, Dodge held a class of one. Its influence stretched far beyond its production years, inspiring the Dodge Little Red Express, the Dakota Shelby, the Ram SRT10, and the Ram TRX. Even the idea behind the Ford Lightning can trace its roots back to this forgotten pioneer. If you enjoyed exploring this hidden chapter of muscle history, remember to like the video, share it with fellow enthusiasts, and subscribe for more stories from the golden age of American performance. I will see you all in the next one, enthusiasts.